why Susan connect. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start the service, I know many of you have mobile phones. Now's the opportunity to just make sure they're turned off or turned onto a silent position. Save the next 25 minutes or so is a time when we don't necessarily need to be connected to the outside world, because you're all drawn here, as this lady was indeed a significant part of your life. For those of you who are speaking today, you don't need to wear a mask, or take it off when you're speaking. That's what I'm meaning. Okay, okay. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. If you haven't already found out, my name is Jane McDonald, and I'm the retired Uniting Church minister here on York Peninsula. It's my privilege to be leading our time together as we remember and celebrate the life of Elizabeth Jean Germein. Well, we all knew her simply as Beth, so for our time together this afternoon, that's what we'll continue to call her. Of course, due to COVID-19 restrictions, some who would like to be here in person to farewell Beth are unable to do so. Joining us by the wonders of live stream are Beth's daughter Sue, granddaughter Nina, and Nina's dad David. They're in Sydney. Miriam's son Alex from Melbourne, and other family members who live interstate. We welcome you too. We also welcome the residents of the Dinham Wing, where Beth was living, who will be watching as well. And other family members, perhaps around South Australia, who could not be here. I trust that everyone who is involved today in some way will find this celebration of Beth's life meaningful and heartwarming. Beth was the beloved wife firstly of Bill and later of Jack, much-loved mother and mother-in-law to Annette and Brenton, David and Stephanie, Miriam and Susan. She was also Nana and great-nana to a younger generation that will surely have many fond memories to carry with them into the rest of their lives. Beth loved her family and her family loved her. At the conclusion of our time here in the chapel, Beth's earthly remains will be interred in Curramulka Cemetery alongside her beloved Bill. I met with Annette and Brenton last Saturday and we talked about Beth's life. I've only known her since she went into the Dinham Wing and I arrived in Ardrossan. It was about the time that her dementia had entered that stage where it takes a toll on everybody. Beth would come to the church services I led each month in the Dinham Wing. She always had something to say, interesting things like, "What are you waiting for? Get a move on, will you?" When it appeared I was waiting just too long for everybody else to arrive. And of course, we would all be familiar with Beth asking every so often, "Where's Annette? Why isn't she here? I want Annette." Beth's deteriorating condition did not stop those who had known her all their lives from continuing to love her dearly. And often the old Beth shone through with clear-sighted and funny comments about her situation. As As I was leaving Annette and Brenton's home on Saturday, Annette showed me some of Beth's beautiful pieces of tapestry and crewel embroidery. There's one up here for us all to see. They are truly works of art. Their exquisite designs and colours had me thinking about life and the many ways in which it resembles a beautiful piece of embroidery. This is summed up in a poem that was written many years by a lady known as Corrie ten Boom, who spent time in a German detention camp during her life. At the end of her life, she reflected on all things that make our lives what they are. And this is what she wrote. My life is but a weaving between my God and me. I cannot choose the colours he weaves so steadily. There are times he weaves sorrow, and I, in foolish pride, forget he sees the upper and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent and the shuttles cease to fly, will God unroll the canvas and reveal the reasons why the dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned. He knows, he loves, he cares. Nothing this truth can dim, and he gives the very best to those who leave the choice to him. We're now going to hear from Annette and David as they tell us how Beth lived her tapestry of life.
Oh, this one. Oh, yeah, I get it. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's easy. Okay. Elizabeth Jean Slater was born 6th of June 1923 at 45 Kent Street, Hawthorne. She was the youngest daughter of David Manson Slater and Annie May Mutton, who came from Millicent and were of Scottish heritage. Her father, David, worked for Dalgety & Co. as the manager of the Millicent branch and then in Adelaide, where he headed up the barley department. Beth's dad travelled around the state buying barley and wheat, taking care of land sales. On York Peninsula, one of his clients was Walter Cameron, with wife Ida, at their farm Wattle Grove near Curramulka. They would become very important in the life of the Germein family. With her older siblings, Stuart, Margaret, Geoffrey, Dorothy, Beth had a strict but very happy childhood. The father was an elder at the Hawthorne Presbyterian Church, so they were regular and active churchgoers. Their life was simple but happy. Lots of visits with other families, with high teas, games, music and dancing, and shared camping holidays, some of them on York Peninsula, and Mum wrote about one of them. Once news came that the Port Wakefield Road was flooded, but Dad, being Dad, decided to leave anyway. When we reached Virginia, the road was a river, and Dad had to pay 10 shillings to have the company Essex pulled through by horse and cart. We were on our way to Corny Point, and the road from Port Wakefield was unsealed. The last part of it just being a bush track. How we loved Corny Point. One day, when Beth was in grade 7, her dad was taking off on a cattle buying trip to the southeast. On her way to school, Beth said to him, "I better kiss you goodbye now, because I won't be seeing you again." That was truer than she realised. Her father, out inspecting cattle on the property, collapsed and died in the paddock of a heart attack. He was 56, Beth was 11. Beth's world changed forever. In some ways, she never got over the loss of her dad. Beth's mother, Annie May, was in dire straits, as David Slater had been rather cavalier with finances and left only a small insurance policy. The The straitened circumstances meant Beth could not, unlike her sisters, go to the Presbyterian Girls' College, and with others had helped to make ends meet. The Camerons at Curramulka offered some assistance to the family. Their daughter Heather needed somewhere to board while going to school in Adelaide, and so she came to live at Kent Street, about the same age as Beth. They quickly became sisters. Beth would go home with Heather to the farm school holidays. She wrote in her journal, "One May, we went over on the steamer Kanata with Heather's cousin Germein, Bill, in brackets. It was Heather's birthday those holidays, and so the carpet was rolled back, food piled high, and all the local kids were invited to dance. Heather and I were sitting at the piano playing a duet when Ida came in saying, 'I've got someone I want you to meet.' It was Bill who said, 'But we've already met.' And so there they were, Beth and Bill. I want to digress a minute to talk about Wilbur Rivers, Germein, Beth's first husband, and her grandfather and great-grandfather.
We wanted to include him in this eulogy for several reasons. One reason is that we four Germein kids, Annette, David, Miriam and Susan, lost him at a very early age and never got to give him the kind of send-off you get at a funeral. A second reason is that although Beth married again later in life, this first half of her life with Bill was the defining experience of her life, and she will be buried next to him down at the Curry Cemetery. And thirdly, for the sake of our children and grandchildren, who probably know nothing of him, we wanted you to meet him and know something of Beth's life with him in those early years. Our dad, Bill, was born to Stanley Rivers Germein and his 26-year-old wife, Doris, at the Maitland Hospital in 1921. 6 weeks after giving birth, Doris died of a blood infection. Racked by grief for his young bride and damaged by his frightful experiences at Gallipoli and the Somme, Stanley disappeared to Western Australia to wandering torment, leaving baby Bill in the hospital nursery. The baby was weak and near death when Ida Cameron, who happened to be Doris's sister, came to find baby Bill. Ida coaxed him back to life, feeding him egg custards with an eyedropper. Bill lived with the Cameron family at Wattlegrove for his first 7 years. Ida and Walter lovingly referred to him as our other son, Bill. By the time Beth met Bill on the steamer that May day in 1936, he was 15 and she 13. I think they fell for each other straight away. Once Beth got her intermediate certificate at Only High, she had to leave in order to get a job and help support the household. She attended Miss Mann's Business College for a crash course in typing, shorthand and bookkeeping, and got her first job at cash orders in the Edmonds building. She did very well and then got a job at Colonial Mutual Life Assurance. All this time she was getting regular letters from Bill, and on his occasional trips to Adelaide he would take her out for tea and a fill. Beth says his meal was always the same: tomato soup and a mixed grill, with any vegetables left on the plate. Mum had some other suitors, but for Dad, Beth was always the one. Then World War II started. Beth signed up for the Women's Australian National Service and then the Australian Women's Army Service. She worked in signals in Adelaide. Bill had already joined the 13th Battalion along with Harold Hawke, Bill Giles and John Macleay. Private Germain and his mates were sent off to New Guinea as cliff watchers. Photos of the rough jungle camp show them all gaunt but grinning, although Dad at least became very unwell with malaria. Beth and Bill married soon after the war finished at Hawthorne Presbyterian Church and had their honeymoon at the Windsor Hotel in Melbourne. They then began life at Stonehaven, the Sandy Names farm that Bill's father Stan had bought to provide a livelihood for his son. They started married life in the old farmhouse. with a wood stove, a chip bath heater, a kerosene fridge and a toilet out the back. They didn't have a phone and had to walk over the paddocks to the Frasers' farm to make a phone call, but they did have the McFarlane piano for Mum to play. They didn't have a car and relied on Stan Germein, who would drive up, often with Bill Grundy, to bring a basket full of fresh veggies, some fresh fish and always a package of white peppermints. Beth would have the water boiling and they would all sit for a cuppa and chat. Beth and Bill picked the biggest stones off the paddocks, planted wheat and barley, went spotlighting to kill the rabbits and sold the skins. Mum would render down the fat from the meat they killed and sell that to the rabbit man as well. They had a couple of cows and some chooks and would sell cream and eggs. Mum also made her own butter. They kept sheep, and after shearing, Bill would load up the truck and drive it over to Port Adelaide. He also had to cart grain down to Pine Point. All this with rabbit plagues, mouse plagues, drought and northerly winds. They had various workers stay on the farm, and Mum provided hospitality for them in the house. Interspersed with all this activity were the births of the children. Annette in 1947, followed by David in 1949, Miriam in 1953 and Susan in 1955. It was a lot of work, but they were very happy. Any brief holidays were spent down at Black Point or sometimes in the Adelaide Hills. In 1960, they started to build a new home on the farm to house their large family, but the effects of the war had left their mark on Bill's health, and in February 1961, towards the end of the harvest, Bill had a heart attack and died. He left behind a 37-year-old widow with 4 children aged 5 to 13. Beth had the job of running the farm, completing the new house and moving in, and bringing up 4 children by herself. John McClay, Bill's New Guinea comrade, made sure that she got DVA support as a war widow, and that support made a huge difference to her life. Mum kept a diary of those years, and it tells of the difficulties of managing the farm at a time when, for example, women couldn't go into the shearing shed but had to rely on second-hand progress reports from others. As well as the support of the local legatee, Jim Craig, Mum did have 2 advisors, Gold Poking Horn and Jack Cameron. They came over now and then to give practical help or advice over a cup of tea at the kitchen table. Yes, please. Thank you. She relied on a succession of labourers to do the farming work until David was old enough to take it on. The bookkeeping she'd learnt at Miss Mann's Business College came in very handy.
Yeah, I'll be good now. There you go. Mum's diary makes fascinating reading with details of all the ups and downs of farm and family life. One entry was in September 63. Shearing started, Jim Cameron is classing the wool and came to dinner. David has been in the shed all day and Susan has been over there all day working. I've not heard Don's opinion of the wool yet, but believe he is disappointed in the cut of Hoggart's wool. Jim said the wool, on the whole, is much stronger than last year's. I wish I knew more about it, but can't go poking around in the shed.
These days you have to throw a rock on the roof, don't you?
Oh, yeah, something like that. Feed is prolific and crops look good. In early 1968, David was old enough to take over, and Beth moved over to settle at Stirling so that Miriam and Susan could finish their schooling in Adelaide. Mum remained anxious about the farm, but was relieved to be away from it and living in her beloved Adelaide Hills. She bought a house at Stirling and set about creating a beautiful garden, planting seedlings that are still there as magnificent mature trees. Susan and Miriam completed school and took off on their own adventures. Annette had long since married Brenton after completing her training as a nurse, so Mum was left alone. She'd always been very family focused, and being shy from an early age did not easily make new friendships. but she kept busy with gardening, walking, spinning, weaving, tapestry, visiting family, playing the piano. When she was 53, Mum went on a bus holiday in New Zealand with a friend and met Jack Coble. On the flight back, Mum was sitting next to Jack, not her friend. Jack was about 15 years older and came from Melbourne. Mum wasn't sure at first, but Jack was very keen. So they got married. Jack came to live at Stirling. He was a loyal companion and a big support for Mum. They did everything together, gardening, going to church, helping with Meals on Wheels, and visiting family. They lived happily together for 24 years until Jack's death in 2001.
Alone again, Mum struggled along for a few more years, but with a big steep garden to look after, she decided to sell. She moved down to a retirement village at Kensington Park and stayed there until she was 92. Being Mum, she tried to maintain her independence as long as possible, walking up to the shops and to church and doing all her own finances. Eventually, we realised that she needed a higher level of care, and so she came to the friendly dinner wing in the Ardrossan Community Hospital. Throughout all of her life, being with her family was always the most important thing to Beth. She did so much for us, and we probably didn't appreciate it at the time. But as a mother, she accepted our life choices and was always there for a chat and to listen to our worries when we needed it. Beth had her share of losses in life, but always focused on her love for and responsibility towards her family, and always balanced her own worries with a ready laugh, music, and the joy of her growing family. You could say that adversity provides a training ground, and it would be safe to say that the struggles and losses that Beth dealt with gave her an immense resilience and wisdom, along with a youthful and open approach to life. Mum had a cheeky wit. Just a couple of weeks ago, it was actually probably a couple of months, David was visiting her, and in conversation about something or other, he said, I'm thinking. And quick as a wink, she said, what with? In closing, we would like to thank the staff and residents at the dinner wing for their kindness and care for Mum over the last 6 years. We'd also like to recognise the part that so many people in this York Peninsula community, for example the Cameron family, have played in the history of our own family. Thank you. Now I just have something else to say, just quickly. Firstly, on behalf of all the family, I would like to thank the staff at the Ardrossan Hospital for their unfailing care over the past 7 years. Their kindness and respect for all the residents and their attention to Mum's needs would not be surpassed anywhere. And just a few thoughts. I think you all would have a memory of Mum as you knew her, just a little thing, something you did together or something she said. And these are a couple of mine. Mum was a city girl, so when Dad died, imagine the struggle she must have had, knowing nothing about farming. What a steep learning curve. And after the farm, she was happiest at Stirling with Jack, tending their beautiful garden of azaleas, rhododendrons, camellias and hydrangeas. And there's a lovely collection of flowers up there from Val and Jeff Coble in Western Australia, one of Jack's daughters. I only got in touch with her just the other day, and anyway, she sent these beautiful flowers. And her best friend Smokey, a surprise birthday present, the best one ever. Smokey was a cat. Smokey came to us to live, but things were never the same. She really missed Smokey. Her lovely voice, early days in Denham at sing-along. I could hear Mum's voice singing all the old songs she knew so well. Coffees at the Stirling Organic Market Cafe. Walks around Stirling and Kensington, where Mum would speak to all and sundry, especially children and animals. She loved the visits to Denham by various groups of children. We will all have memories of our mother. I hope they will find a place in our hearts forever. Thank you to all who have contributed to this farewell for Mum.
Thank you for letting me speak today. So I'm Jodie, I'm the Director of Nursing at Ardrossan Hospital and the Dinner Wing. And I always get a bit annoyed coming to funerals and I can hear a eulogy because we hear and learn so much, and I feel as though we should have spent more time hearing these stories because they were pretty amazing. Unfortunately, Narita let me down a little bit tonight and she didn't tell me that I was speaking, so I don't have anything really prepared, but I just really want to let you know that I know that dementia is very difficult, and sometimes the person that you come and visit isn't the person that you can remember. But I want you to know that she was very much. See, I can't do it, can I? No, I'll be fine. I can do it. But I just want you to know that Beth was very family, and the four most important people in her life were Annette, David, Miriam, and you too, Susan. And I'm sorry that you're not here. She had some really wonderful times, and I think she loved her sharing with Annette. She loved talking farming with you, David, and she would often talk about after the year left. She loved your chats, Miriam, and she loved sitting and talking to you. And she loved walking with you, Susan, along the coast, so that was something that was very important to her. She was a lovely lady, had lots of stories to tell, and she was good fun, and I love her chat. So thank you, and thank you for trusting us to looking after her. And I'm sure all the residents in Dunedin will definitely miss her. So thank you.
We have some photos to watch of Beth's life. like to invite you now, if you would like to join me in a short time of prayer as we give thanks for Beth's life and think of one another. I know for many people praying is not something we do all the time. If that's the case, then simply reflect on the photos you've just seen, the stories you've just heard, and in your own way give thanks for Beth. God of all time and our God, our years belong to you. Our endings are often your beginnings, and our dreams are often your realities. Loving God, we turn to you on this day of remembering with thankful hearts that reach out to you in hope. On this day of parting, give us new strength to walk by faith toward the promise of tomorrow, and courage to live in ways that bring blessing to others. We give thanks for the many ways in which Beth shared her life with us and with others. We acknowledge her loyalty to her family as wife, mother, nana and great-nana. And we give thanks for the support and strength she gave to her family and to all those she called friends. In strength and in weakness, in the brightness of joy and the darkness of sorrow, we remember Beth as one of us, and we give thanks for her part in our lives. Loving God, we pray for those who will miss Beth. We ask that you comfort all the members of her family as they remember the special place she had in their lives. Let their hearts be at rest and touch their lives with your peace. And now, O Lord, support us by your grace through all the hours of life's day, until the shadows lengthen, the busy world is hushed, the fever of life is over, and the evening comes. Then, in your love, grant us a safe lodging, a holy rest, and peace at the last. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. As we prepare to head out to the cemetery for the second half of our time together, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Amen. Please give your attention now to Ian.
Drawing to a close of this portion of Beth's service. Shortly we'll be moving from here. We'll be carrying her coffin or wheeling her coffin out to the doorway and then lifting it into the back of the hearse. From there we'll be proceeding in cortege out to the Curramulka Cemetery. When we head out there, just before we get to the Curry Oval, if you're familiar with that, the road changes from bitumen onto the gravel part of the road, there's some really big potholes. We almost will be stopping as we go through some of the, about 3 areas that's a lot of potholes, and so we'll be slowing down nearly to a crawl as we go through them. If you've got clean cars, I'll apologise for that, because I can guarantee they aren't going to get dirty. But it shows up being used. In fact, probably it's used to having dirty cars, haven't lived on the farm for some time in their life as well. So just take it nice and easy when we're driving out there. Those of you who are watching online, this will be concluding our live stream. If you wish to see Beth's burial, please contact us and we can send you through a DVD of what we're watching here, what we've been, as we've been celebrating her life. Ladies